Aidan Kerins, thank you so much for inviting me to your favourite bar, McDade's.
Thanks, Garry. Yes, my favourite bar in Dublin for several decades now, a bar that I've frequented since my 20s, and I still thoroughly enjoy going there when it's open, that is.
You probably, when you go back in, it'll be like going into the Twilight Zone with the dust from the previous decade and stuff.
I think it'll be like, well, it always was a bit of a spit in the floor place, but I think now, after being locked up for a year or maybe a year and a half, who knows, it'll probably be definitely needing a touch of Mr. Sheen on the counters.
But it's a great spot, and thank you so much for joining us. I have a couple of questions for you, right?
Sure.
And as we like to do, I'm going to spring them on you. So, how are you staying productive at the moment? And
In the
most
lockdown. Yeah.
motivated?
I think, and I have a good team around me in Kirby. I think people found it okay for the first few months, and then later on in the year, people found it more challenging. And I think this lockdown over the winter, people are finding it hard, and I've definitely seen that among people. And I'm no different to anyone else. I think before, when we had the summertime and the longer evenings, it was easier to keep yourself going. The last while, when you're sitting at home working, it definitely is harder to stay motivated. The good thing is, I think most of us in this industry, we're having plenty of interaction with our colleagues and customers, whether it's through Teams or even phone calls. But we're finding at least you're engaging with people a lot, which is keeping us all going. And also the fact that we're lucky, I think, especially in the data center world, that it's still a sector that's growing fast. Pressure is on to get things done. We still have 2,000 people in the field delivering projects. So there's an awful lot of support and back office activity has to go into that. So you can't afford to take your foot off the gas for too long, Garry.
And as a human, and you're very much a people's person, and you and I have spoken about it before, there would be nothing like being in McDade's right now. There will be nothing like observing the different characters and the body language and the interaction and stuff. You must be really looking forward to that day again.
Yeah, I mean, but excuse me. I mean, even Gary, we talk about even the data center. We all miss the conferences and all the get-togethers. I mean, those of us who couldn't, who love going to Monaco every year, the full team from hosting Ireland out there. It's a great event. You spend 3 days, meeting all the people. Same with data center in London, all the award ceremonies, and then the various activities in Dublin. You miss all those events. So the face-to-face side of it is definitely definitely hard. And I think when this does finish, we're all looking forward to getting back out there, even just meeting clients for lunch or even meeting colleagues and competitors for pints and touching base and catching up with people.
Yeah, no, it will be a great time. And as you say, what will be most interesting is to see who's got younger looking and who's actually aged more. Because you know yourself, when you live with people all the time, they don't seem to age, they just gradually go. But when you've missed them for a while, you go, Jesus Christ. But you and I are fine.
Yeah.
We've looked 50 since we were 25 or 30. And that's the beauty of going bald young, right?
Well, Gary, I must say, I'm actually quite fortunate because I know, and I've a search from my doctor, I'm actually looking younger every year as it goes past. So I'm now looking in my late 30s again, or so I'm convinced. So that's always a good sign. And I'm sure when my customers see me, they won't recognize who I am. And I've got so young over the last 18 months.
That's a wonderful thing I found about Zoom as well. You can put these filters on and it can filter out all of the wrinkles. I should call you Benjamin Button, maybe. Maybe that's
That's it. Maybe that's what I'll do.
So I'm going to ask you throw one more little question at you, and see how you get on. Writing books. Have you ever thought about it? You ever thought about writing a self-help book?
You know, I. It's funny you say that. No, I probably haven't ever thought about writing a self-help book, but I often think if you could talk to your younger self professionally, what advice would you give? To help your career.
Hey,
And I think we've all, to get anywhere today, you have to work hard. And I think if you look back 50 years ago, things were different. You got an education, you got your degree, you could walk into any job and the world took off. But the world has definitely changed. Competition, both because everybody gets qualifications today and international competition is high. And, like you go to a McDonald's down in Tokyo and everyone is speaking fluent English back at you, so the world is definitely harder for young people to get on. So I think I always say to my nephews and nieces and even younger friends of the family, starting off in your career, what would you do to make it to get you on a good path that can make it an interesting career? And I don't mean just money, because that's okay, but a satisfying career. What do you want to do? And I always think that the bits of advice you try and give people, especially younger people, I'm no expert at it, but when you've worked for 30 years, as we all have, and Garry, you've worked overseas as well, in the States and in the UK, and you pick up things that benefit. And I always think, one thing I say to all my nephews and nieces, and in fact my own colleagues in Kirby, is building up a network of people in the industries you work in. It's very important. You only see it, and I always say, even to my own guys, when you're on a site working on a project site, don't go for lunch every day with the same guy that you drove in with, that you have lunch with, and you go home with, or you go for pints with. Meet new people, and just even to broaden out your relationships, get to know people. You get to see how other people's views on work and projects. And as you go through, especially in the data center world, I mean, there's people we work with now who 30 years ago, I was working on semiconductor plants with them, and now they're here doing data center projects. Pharmaceutical people move around into data centers. So I think it's all about getting your relationships built up and developing the skills to broaden the network as you're younger. I think that's a good bit of advice. And if I was writing a book, which I won't be, but that's what I would put into it for younger people in their 20s, starting off careers.
Isn't it really interesting that you say that? Because I've been speaking with a number of people with ologies on ologies about all of this type of stuff. And one of the things that I've learned recently, and only recently, is there's a name for exactly the thing that you've just described. And what it's called is the emotional quotient, emotional intelligence, as distinct to where we may have been brought up to believe intellectual intelligence is more important. And isn't it so interesting now? We're in an era maybe where information intelligence is only a click away for anybody on a Google search. So therefore, yes, it's about how do you take that info, put it together, make it understandable to present to somebody as a solution. And
it's like when we're when we're selling, and I mean, I work in sales a long time, but when you're working in selling, you want to have a fairly solid level of EQ so that people can say, this is a guy I want to work with, or this is a gal I trust, or this is someone that I think is, if the job starts to slip, that this person's going to roll up their sleeves and help me out. And I think people buy, as you said, people don't buy in cost all the time. They buy in relationships and trust. They're the two biggest things. I mean, as I would say, if you want to get a filling or a new crown in your tooth, you don't go into the dentist surgery and say, bring me your cheapest dentist. People don't do that. If I was getting heart surgery, I wouldn't go to the Bon Secours and say, give me your cheapest heart surgeon.
No, you're so right. But I've found that having a whole Filodex of compromising photographs of people has stood me really well in that particular aspect of negotiation.
That's true. Garry, you could retire on the back of that Rolodex.
Oh, listen, I am. But listen, it's been short, sharp, and quick, but it's been really interesting and insightful. Thanks for inviting me to your favorite bar. It's been great. Maybe next.
Garry, I look forward to hosting you for a proper pint in MacDade sometime. I also look forward to this lifting and all the Host in Ireland crew getting back together again, because it's long overdue.
Thank you so much, Aidan. Stay safe.
Thank you, Garry. Take care.